Hey guys, Redneck Mini 14 here. On today's episode of The Guns That Shaped Me, we're going to talk about my bolt action 308 rifle, and that is the Mossberg MVP Predator model. Now, Mossberg has made the MVP for a while, but they don't make this particular model anymore, which is a shame because I really like this one. I actually bought this rifle back when the MVP was fairly new. It was probably only out for a year or two when Mossberg first came out with the MVP, and the whole claim to fame on the Mossberg MVP was that on the 5.56 models it came with AR magazines, so you could put a 30 rounder or a 60 rounder or a 100 round drum or whatever AR-15 magazine, you could put it in a bolt action rifle, which was really cool. And back then that was pretty that was a pretty new concept back then. I don't know if any other bolt action rifles did that back then, and of course now they all do that. But what I thought was cool with the 308 model was that you could use a couple of different magazines. You could either use an M1A or an M14 magazine, or you could use an AR-10 magazine. And I think it's the DPMS AR-10 magazine. I think with AR-10s, they don't all work the same for whatever reason. So like I think there's the Armalite version, and then there's the DPMS version. I think the DPMS version is the more popular, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't own an AR-10, and I just remember when I bought this rifle learning that this is the DPMS pattern AR-10 magazine. So if you were going to get an AR-10 magazine to go with it, you would have to get that. So anyway, I bought this rifle, I was probably like about 20 years old. I think what I ended up doing was I had my Maverick 88, and I had that for a little while, and I also had a Henry, just a basic Henry 22 lever action that it was a cool rifle, but I wasn't in love with the rifle because what I really wanted was a Marlin 39A 22 lever action. I thought that was the coolest lever action 22 there was, but they were expensive. But so I had a Henry 22, and then I sold that for like $225, and barely shot. And then I also had my Maverick 88 that I sold to a buddy of mine for $200. So I had $425 between these two guns that I sold. And I worked at Walmart at the time, and the Mossberg MVP was not a rifle that they actually carried in the store, but they had this big book of guns, rifles and shotguns that you could order, special order. And I want to say at the time, these Mossberg MVPs, because I really wanted, I had a 30-30 for a deer rifle at the time. That was my only deer rifle. I wanted to have a second deer rifle that was a bolt action that I could shoot further distances. And when the MVP came out, I just fell in love with it because you have the detachable box magazine, you have the ability to put 20 and 25 round magazines with like the M1A and AR-10 magazines. So if I ever wanted to go plinking with it, I could. And so Walmart had this big book of guns that you could order. And around that time, I want to say these were a little under $600. And I ended up going with a scoped model, one that was already scoped, because then I wouldn't have to buy another scope. Now, a lot of people say, oh, you should replace that scope with something better. Honestly, I don't feel like that's necessary for what I use this rifle for. Maybe someday I'll upgrade it, but honestly, I don't have a problem with the scope. So the cool thing about when I bought this gun was that I think there was a typo in the system. So, because like the unscoped models rang up for a higher price than this one. I think I paid $528 for this, but I think what it was supposed to be was $582. I think whoever put it in the system flip-flopped those two numbers, so I actually got it for a much better deal than I could have, because Walmart, sold it for cheaper than anywhere else, and then on top of that, they had the typo in their system, and so I actually saved quite a bit of money by buying this rifle. And I also just loved the laminate wood stock that comes with, that came with this particular rifle. This same kind of pattern type of wood came with like the Target model and the Predator model. So I just, this was the kind of stock that I really wanted. So anyway, I got a really good deal on the rifle, and I actually had a few problems with this rifle. Now, I think it stemmed from I really didn't clean the rifle when I first bought it, and then so I took it out to the range, and I had like a bunch of boxes of ZQI 7.62x51 ammo, and I got it for real cheap because I also got that at Walmart, and I had 15 boxes of it, and I decided I was going to take a box out and take it to the range and sight it in for that first, because that was really the only .308 ammunition I had at the time. And so I took it to the range, and what happened was the bolt was really sticking in the chamber, so I would fire the round, and then the bolt would stick, and I would have to really beat on the bolt. And so I only put 5 rounds through the gun the first time I took it out, because I was really tired of having to deal with that. On top of the fact that the scope bases, and I should have known this, but the scope bases and the scope rings, they were not Loctited. The screws did not have any Loctite on them, so they actually loosened up, and by the time I was done shooting the 5 rounds or however many rounds I shot that day, this was all really, really loose. And so I had to go back home, take everything apart, put Loctite on it, and I cleaned the rifle, and hadn't shot it for a while, and then I finally took it out. I took the same ammunition, and then I took 1 or 2 other types of ammunition out as well, like some Winchester and something else. I don't remember, but anyway, ever since then, it shot just fine with all the ammunition that I've shot through it, and so I'm thinking that was just because I didn't clean the rifle when I first got it, and I really should have done that. So that was my fault. But that's really the only problems I've ever had with this rifle. And then sometime later, whenever Walmart decided they were going to start to get out of selling different types of ammunition, they had this Perfecta brand, and they had Perfecta in both full metal jacket and soft point ammunition. But the soft point ammunition, I guess it wasn't very popular, so they were clearancing it out, and usually would sell for $15. And they actually marked it down to $7 a box, which is an outstanding price. I mean, yeah, it's bottom of the barrel ammunition, but they were selling it for $7 a box. And even back then, that was an amazing deal. So I bought all of their boxes of .308 Perfecta soft points. And so I think I have 12 boxes or 16 boxes or something of that ammunition. And, I sighted the rifle in for that, and that's going to be my hunting ammunition for this particular rifle for years and years to come, because I think at this point I've only shot through 1 box, 1.5 boxes, something like that. So I have at least 10 boxes, maybe 11 or more boxes full of ammunition for it, and that's awesome. So I don't really have to buy any more ammunition for this rifle anytime soon, because this is the only 308 I have, although I may at some point decide to sight it in for something else, maybe, I don't know. But I have taken this rifle out several times hunting. I do have 3 different deer rifles, so I kind of rotate through them, and I actually have more than 3 that I plan to deer hunt with, but I've only ever taken 3 out and actually gotten deer with them. So I think I've only gotten 1 deer with this one, and it was just a little, like a yearling doe. It wasn't anything spectacular, but you get what you take what you can get. Where I go hunting, I'm not looking for the big bucks or anything. Usually the first legal deer I see, I shoot, because I don't usually see a whole lot of deer, and I'm hunting for meat. I like the deer steaks and the deer chops and tenderloin and roasts. I like all the good cuts of meat, plus I like the jerky and the summer sausage and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm not a trophy hunter. So, but anyway, out of all the deer that I've shot in my life, I think I've only shot 1 with this, maybe 2. I don't remember. I've only shot like 8 or 9 deer in my life, and I know I've shot 2 with my 30-30, and I've shot at least 1 with my 30-06, and I've shot a bunch with a muzzle loader, and so I know I've shot at least 1 with this, but I don't know. Its memory's a little hazy. I don't remember if I've shot 2 deer with this one and 1 with my 30-06, or if I've shot 2 with my 30-06 and 1 with this. Anyway, but yeah, this was my very first bolt-action rifle that I ever bought. Like I said, I was probably 20-ish years old, somewhere around there, 20, 21. And I really wasn't into bolt-action rifles, honestly. I was more into lever actions, and I was also more into semi-automatics, like, say, an M1 carbine and a Mini 14. Those are 2 of my favorite rifles, and so I had all those kind of rifles, a Marlin 336 and a Marlin 1895 4570, which is actually, this sling actually came off of that rifle. I just kind of put it on here when I go hunting, because I didn't have a designated sling for this one, but I haven't taken the 4570 out hunting yet, so there was no reason to have it on that rifle. But anyway, so I had all those kind of guns, and those were the guns that I really liked, but I wasn't really into bolt-action rifles much back then, until I bought this rifle, and everything really changed, because once I got it sighted in, I thought this was, like, back then anyway, was like one of the perfect bolt-action rifles to have for a prepper, because of the magazine. So it comes with a 10-round magazine, but if you need spare magazines, you could always do the M14 magazines or the AR-10 magazines. You have a lot of different magazine options for it. And it's a 308, so it's a very common caliber. So back then, when this was a pretty revolutionary thing, it was one of the more ideal types of rifles to have if you were going to have a bolt-action rifle that you needed to bug out with. Of course, now things are different, and you have a lot of different guns that use the same type of magazines, but back then, it wasn't like that. So anyway, this rifle really got me into bolt-action rifles, and so, I later got a 30-06 Thompson Center Avenger as 30-06, and then I also have a few other bolt-action rifles. I have a Lee Enfield 303 British. That's a cool bolt-action rifle, and I also wouldn't mind having bolt-action rifles in other calibers like .270 Winchester or 300 Winchester Magnum. You know, there's a lot of different calibers that you can put in a bolt action rifle that can do a lot of different things. If you need to reach out further, you can go with like 300 Win Mag. If you don't have to go very far, you know, the 308 is perfect. You know, if you only have to go like maybe, you know, 200 yards, 300 yards, across like a cornfield or something, this is better than say a 30-30 or a 45-70. But if you need to reach out even further, you can go with like the 270 Winchester, or even further, you could go with like you know, 300 Win Mag, 7mm Remington mag, things like that. So there's, you know, bolt actions, you can really reach out, or you can go a little bit closer, but not necessarily as close as like say a brush gun. So anyway, that's at the point where I really saw the importance of having a good bolt action. You know, lever actions have their place as brush guns and things like that, and I always will have a 30-30 of some sort in my collection, but there's also good bolt actions which also fill a different void. So anyway, that is the Mossberg MVP Predator. Like I said, they don't make this particular model anymore. They really only make like the scout versions of this rifle, which is a shame because they used to have a bunch of different variations of this rifle, and they've really cut down on what they offer. And that, like I said, that's a shame because this is an excellent rifle. And I, just like most of the guns in my collection, this is a rifle that I will probably never sell. Because it's, out of all of the bolt action rifles that I have, it's my favorite. And if I needed to bug out, this would probably be the bolt action rifle that I would take because of all the reasons I've already explained. And like I said, maybe someday I'll upgrade the scope, but I've never had any problems with the scope. You know, I've only shot 1, maybe 2 deer with the rifle, but I never missed when I shot at an animal with this rifle. So, so far I don't really see a reason to upgrade the scope, but maybe someday I will.
Hey, before I go, I just thought I'd remind everybody that I do have a second channel called Redneck Off the Range. Over there, I post most of my non-gun related content, so whether it's a video on my new tractor, my power tools, my projects that I'm working on, maybe wild game recipes, or just a random vlog, I post all of this kind of content over on my secondary channel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out, Redneck Off the Range. But that's all for this video, so subscribe to my channel, like me on Facebook. I'm Redneck Mini 14, and until next time, be safe.